As a constitutional law attorney, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and we finally, as of last week, have a new Speaker of the House of Representatives. Representative Mike Johnson from the great state of Louisiana has ascended to the speakership and has the gavel. So what does that actually mean for conservatives? There have been a lot of speculation of really divergent views and frankly, very uninformed views as to who Mike Johnson is. If you've been paying attention to inside baseball politics, then Mike Johnson should be a familiar voice and face and presence because he's been in Republican leadership for the last several years. He's been in the U.S. House of Representatives for the last 7 years. He also was part of the House management of the first defense impeachment team of Donald Trump and did a ton of media during that time. That was actually when I got to know him personally. And kind of fun story, the very first day that I started working for President Trump back in November of 2019. The very first day, he invited me to go to a rally on the plane. Yes, Air Force One, very cool. And I came on the plane and was in the conference room with the entire Louisiana delegation because we were going to Louisiana for a rally. And included in the Louisiana delegation was Congressman Mike Johnson. So I got to know him from that moment. We had some great conversations in the air, connected at that point. I learned about his background as a constitutional law attorney. He had been in practice for over 20 years defending religious liberty cases. He is a very stalwart conservative. And so what's fascinating to me looking at kind of the social media and also mainstream media response is that you're getting one of kind of a couple of different views. And I want to break these down. The first view is from Republicans who don't know Speaker Johnson. And because, frankly, they're really upset that Jim Jordan didn't get the speakership, they're now suggesting that Mike Johnson must be a RINO, Republican in name only, because he actually got to 217 and because the moderates and the entire conference actually support him when they didn't support Jim Jordan. Let me dispel that myth. Representative Mike Johnson is fully supported by Jim Jordan. He also is one of the most stalwart conservatives in terms of his views on the conservative agenda. He is simply not as polarizing and as firebrand of a national figure as Jim Jordan is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I totally support Jim Jordan. And I love part of what of the firebrand that he is. And he's done so much in his position as the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, the now Weaponization of Government Committee, so many other things that he's done. But he is more polarizing, frankly. And some of the people on the moderate view of the Republican caucus just simply were not going to vote for Jim Jordan. Now, do I think Jim Jordan would have been a great Speaker of the House? Absolutely. But frankly, it really surprised me that Jim Jordan even wanted that position because a lot of what the speaker does is figure out how to get a team and build a coalition of everyone that is involved in the conference. And let's face it, Republicans are not like Democrats. We don't just all fall in line and go lockstep. We have a divergent range of viewpoints from the actual Republicans in name only and the moderate Republicans, maybe even leaning a little bit toward Democrats. And we also then have the super far right conservative Republicans that are in the conference. That's really difficult to manage in terms of being a leader. Kevin McCarthy had a lot of issues coalescing the entire Republican caucus. It was going to be very difficult for someone like Jim Jordan to actually make a difference in that type of role. And the speaker is also very largely administrative, very largely a fundraiser. These are types of roles and expectations and part of the job that, frankly, I don't see somebody like Jim Jordan, who is a firebrand and doing so well in the role of the chairman of the Judiciary Committee and things like that, actually wanting to do some of the administrative work. I mean, there are a lot of jobs that I personally wouldn't want to have. There are things that I love what I'm getting to. A lot of people ask me like why I don't run for elected office. Part of it is because a lot of those positions actually are the responsibility of doing the work of governing, not commenting on and explaining the constitutional conservative biblical worldview position. And so part of it is because I don't want to do all of the mechanics of what the job requires. It's not just about going on media. When you are an elected official, the Speaker of the House is not just about going on media. You actually have administrative work to do. And I think that Mike Johnson is the perfect person, not only for that role, his attention to detail and his administrative performance, but also his ability to gain respect and already have respect from the entire Republican conference. That is not at all something that can be attributed to him as a RINO, but rather somebody who is a team builder and who understands how to coalesce a team. You have to be a team player and remind everyone, this is the Republican agenda. And I think that he can do that, and he can do it very well. Now, on the other side of the aisle, you have people like George Conway, who is an absolute idiot, in my opinion. And I think most of you who are listening, other than the haters, and welcome always to the haters, you would all agree that he's pretty much an idiot as well. But he said that Mike Johnson is actually a wonderful gift to the Democrats. He gave no real reason for it, but this is just an attempt to undermine an absolutely solid win for Matt Gaetz and the other 7 Republicans who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy from the speakership. Remember just a couple of days ago, last week, from the time that that motion was successful and the speaker's house was the speaker's seat was vacated, all the way through the 3 weeks of the negotiations and the votes and different people being nominated, the mainstream media's narrative was Republicans are in chaos. This is a circus. They can't coalesce. They're going to lose the 2024 election. This is totally going to be a slap in the face to all of the voters. They're going to lose the House in 2024. And I was very concerned, frankly, and I said this honestly to all of you, that I was concerned that there wasn't a plan. Great to oust Kevin McCarthy. I was no big fan of his. I defended some of the things that I thought were defensible. But originally, back in January, I wasn't a huge fan of his. He was kind of the next in line, almost like Hillary Clinton. I'm with her. It's my turn. That's what Kevin McCarthy seemed to have in terms of an attitude toward the speakership. But you don't just take out a leader and you don't have any idea of a replacement. That was a very risky gamble. But here's the thing. It absolutely paid off, because the fact that we have Representative Mike Johnson as now Speaker Johnson is, I think, the best possible move for the Republican conference. And I even tweeted the day that Kevin McCarthy was ousted, I said that Mike Johnson was my pick. And you know why? Because I've known all about Mike Johnson and all about his ability to have the respect of the entire conference, his ability to have quiet leadership, and his commitment to constitutional conservatism and the biblical worldview. This is not a gift to the Democrats. Speaking of the biblical worldview, a couple of the Democrats are actually very concerned that Mike Johnson is a Christian. This is just laughable. But this is what Jen Psaki, remember her? Yeah, we'll circle back to Jen Psaki. She's still on MSNBC for some crazy reason. A few people pay attention to her show. And this is what she had to say about Representative Mike Johnson. Listen to this.
Right now, one deeply religious conservative Republican is limping out of the race for president after failing to gain any traction whatsoever. Another deeply religious conservative Republican just ascended to the speakership and is now second in line to the presidency. One of the key differences between Mike Pence and Mike Johnson is, well, Pence refused to go along with Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the election in 2020, while Mike Johnson was a key architect of that plot. Apparently, there is still a place in the Republican Party for extreme Christian conservatism, so long as it's paired with a fealty to the former president. So let's take a few minutes to talk about this new speaker. First glance, Mike Johnson does seem fine-ish. Conservative, yes, but he once started a civility caucus with a Democrat. And if nothing else, he wears a suit and has glasses. How threatening can this guy actually be? Well, he gave us all a little clue as to how he would govern in an interview this week.
I am a Bible-believing Christian. Someone asked me today in the media, they said, it's curious, people are curious, what does Mike Johnson think about any issue under the sun? I said, well, go pick up a Bible off your shelf and read it. That's my worldview.
You heard that right. The Bible doesn't just inform his worldview, It is his worldview. In fact, during his first speech in his new job, Johnson suggested that his election as Speaker was an act of God. Talk about a bit of a humble brag there. So what exactly has God apparently called on Mike Johnson to do? Well, his views on policy are essentially what you'd expect from a religious fundamentalist. They're more divisive than they are divine. Prior to his election to Congress in 2016, Johnson spent nearly 2 decades working for the hard-right conservative legal activist group, the Alliance Defending Freedom. It's a group, by the way, that is so right-wing, it was designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. The ADF has worked for decades to blur the line between church and state, if not erase it altogether. It's kind of their goal. They've pushed to expand LGBTQ plus discrimination in the name of religious freedom. And they were a big part of the effort to overturn Roe v. Wade. Following the Supreme Court's 2003 ruling that struck down the country's sodomy laws as unconstitutional, Johnson criticized the decision and wrote in favor of criminalizing gay sex. He claimed that, quote, states have always maintained the right to discourage the evils of sexual conduct outside of marriage. Then in 2004, Johnson wrote that homosexual relationships are inherently unnatural, ultimately harmful, and a dangerous lifestyle. You don't exactly have to be a religious scholar to know whether discrimination is a key tenet of the Bible. It's not. And then there is his policy on gun violence. Speaker Johnson wants to talk about anything but guns. In 2016, he actually blamed school shootings on no-fault divorce laws, radical feminism, and legal abortion. It's all quite a stretch there. Then there's the obvious question of how Johnson's convictions square with his fierce loyalty to Donald Trump, a guy who has been married multiple times, paid hush money to a porn star, and joked about grabbing women. I would love to know what passage in the Bible told Johnson to become one of the most important architects behind Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election. Which passage? Was it God whispering in his ear to ignore the Constitution and disenfranchise millions of voters? It's hard not to think that Mike Johnson's idea of what America should be is drastically out of line with what America actually is. He clearly envisions a country that's less democratic and less tolerant. And that may explain why he seems more comfortable with the America of the 18th century than the America of today.
Truth has been replaced as the greatest virtue in society by tolerance. Well, we're the inherently intolerant ones who say, wait a minute, life is sacred because we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. We have to stand up for those. Oh, you bigot, can't you be a little more open-minded? Come on, that's so like 18th century, you know. Well, they told us that if we didn't maintain those 18th century values, that the republic would not stand. And so this is the condition we find ourselves in today.
Just holding on to those 18th century values there. The problem with Johnson isn't at all his faith. He's entitled to his personal beliefs, as everyone is, even if they come from the 18th century. But when those beliefs encroach on the rights of others, that's when it becomes dangerous. Whether the rights of gay people, trans people, or the millions of Americans out there who were entitled to have their vote counted.
All right, so Jen Psaki says his views on policy are essentially what you'd expect from a religious fundamentalist. They're more divisive than divine. Really? So, Jen Psaki, everyone has a worldview. You have some basis on which you derive your view of the world. That's what a worldview is. And it can either be informed by truth, and the truth that is a special revelation from God the Creator, or it can be something else. It can be built on something that's false. You can believe that human beings are not made in the image of God, have no inherent dignity and worth, and are just evolved from, you know, this random goo that doesn't have, that we're all basically just a clump of cells. And that's where you get your stance on pro-choice, by the way, to say that human beings aren't any more valuable than the animal kingdom. Right? Or a fly or a pig. That's what some Democrats actually suggest about human beings. That is also, Jen Psaki, a worldview. But the fact that Mike Johnson derives his worldview from truth, and he views the world through a biblical lens, and he says, if you want to know what I think, just go to the Bible and read it. That informs my view. There's nothing fundamentalist or extremist about those views. That's actually what our founders recognized when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, saying that we hold truth to be self-evident, that all humans are created in the image of God. and that our rights are given by God, our creator. They recognized this in the text of the Declaration of Independence, because guess what, Jen Psaki? Their worldview was also based on biblical truth. And so a lot of people are suggesting, falsely, that the First Amendment requires a separation of church and state, that the church cannot inform the state can't inform the church. That's ridiculous. The First Amendment in context required the state not to control the church. The state could not infringe on or control free exercise of religion. That doesn't mean that Christians who participate in a church like Mike Johnson cannot have their faith inform their view of civil government and the exercising and carrying out and discharging of their duties as maybe the Speaker of the House. So to suggest somehow that Mike Johnson is the only person with a worldview is absolutely false. Everyone has a worldview. And you know who else isn't talking about the worldview? Jen Psaki about Joe Biden being a Catholic. Well, why? Because his Catholic worldview, whatever that is to him, and the Democrats would suggest that he's a very faithful Catholic, just like Nancy Pelosi, and yet he's pro-choice. He doesn't have his Catholicism actually inform his administrative policies. Neither does Nancy Pelosi. So that's totally fine with people like Jen Psaki. He can totally be a Catholic and his faith can inform his policy just because it happens to be the policy that people and Democrats like Jen Psaki prefer. So do you see how this is working as a totally manipulative double standard? Christians who are actually biblically based, like Mike Johnson, they have to leave their faith at home. But then the Catholics in name only, like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, totally fine for them to invoke their faith and to say that they are Catholics and they can bring that to the office. What's the difference? The only difference is the outcome. This is why Democrats always are hypocrites. And as I've always said, if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have standards at all. So yes, Jen Psaki, Mike Johnson absolutely can and will bring his faith to work. And every Christian conservative is so proud of it. So we'll be right back with Congressman Bob Good with more of this. And he was one of the original 8 that voted to oust Kevin McCarthy. And I think congratulations are in order. So we'll be right back with more right after this. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. So joining me now is Congressman Bob Good from the great state of Virginia. And Congressman, you joined me right after the Speaker's seat was vacated and the ousting of Kevin McCarthy. And you said, in the face of a lot of criticism, that there would be an actual race, an election and challenge for the Speaker's seat. And that happened over the course of about 3 weeks. And I think we ended up with the absolute perfect person. Congressman Mike Johnson was actually my first pick with no disrespect disrespect to anyone else and the great Republicans who ran, but I think that everything that you advocated for and your fellow colleagues in the Republican caucus advocated for has been justified. So congratulations. And how do you now see the speakership of Mike Johnson continuing to advance the conservative agenda?
Well, thanks for having me again, Jenna. Great to be with you, and I appreciate the encouraging feedback. Mike Johnson was the kind of individual that as far back as a year ago, when we were contemplating the potential challenge to the presumptive speaker on the eve of the 2022 elections, and then thereafter between then and January and through the January battle, Mike Johnson was one of those who we sort of had in mind as the kind of person that perhaps we could land upon that could get the required amount of support, that was respected, admired by House Republican members across the spectrum, that was a honest individual with stature among the conference, credibility, and was a conservative that would be a partner in advancing the conservative agenda that the American people gave us the majority for back again last November. And it wouldn't be, while it wouldn't be accurate to say, oh, we were targeting Mike Johnson, that certainly would not be true. But he was among just a small handful of those who we thought could be the kind of person that could ascend to the speakership if we were able to succeed on the motion to vacate and who began the new challenge or battle to find a new speaker. And I agree with you, among those who were put forward and who were the leading candidates, I think Mike Johnson was the best candidate. I think he was the best person. And the conference is united in a way, certainly I've not seen in my 3 years in Washington. And those who've been there longer, many members have come up to me and told me they've never seen the conference more optimistic, more hopeful, more united, more together, more excited, quite frankly, about the direction under a new leader who is, obviously not the perfect speaker or a perfect speaker, because one does not exist, but he does possess the basic qualities that you would look for in a leader: trustworthiness, humility, strong character, honesty, integrity, and again, his principles, his guiding principles, his values, the foundation upon which all of his legislative priorities will rest, are consistent with Republican principles, conservative Republican principles, and the agenda that we're trying to advance with the trust the American people placed in us last November.
I'm speaking with Congressman Bob Good from Virginia, and that's encouraging to hear about the conference being so united, especially after all of the rhetoric from mainstream media and, of course, your colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the Democrats, saying that, oh, this is fractured and the GOP can't get it together and it's chaotic and all of that. So that narrative is gone. But the new narrative that I've seen is kind of twofold. One, you have, frankly, idiots, in my opinion, like George Conway, who are suggesting that a Speaker Mike Johnson is a gift to the Democrats, and that just tells me that he has no idea who Mike Johnson is. And then on the other hand, you have some of the Republicans who also don't know Mike Johnson, and some of the base who, and some of the Democrats, quite frankly, who are suggesting that because he is such a stalwart and outspoken Christian, that somehow he can't bring religion into politics, which quite frankly, is also just completely antithetical to the foundation of American society and has nothing to do with what we should be doing as Christians and conservatives in civil government. So how do you respond to those types of narratives that are being pushed out there?
To think about the last 3 weeks, and I would just say being just sort of practical, as you know, we had all the hand-wringers and all of the national media pundits sensationalizing, oh, this is chaos, this is a clown show, this is embarrassing, this is going to cost us the 2024 election. And I'll remind everyone that we came into the motion to vacate around the 1st of October having passed 4 of our spending bills, and the Senate had passed 0. We took 3 weeks to have a national election for the Speaker. For the first time in modern times, in decades anyway, the American people could weigh in, let their voices be heard, watch their representatives truly select, vet, challenge, test candidates, and select their speaker. We didn't go next man up with the majority leader. We didn't go next person in line with the majority whip, but we actually worked through those candidates and settled on someone like Mike Johnson. So it was a true contest. But now we emerge 3 weeks later, and the Senate has passed during those 3 weeks? 0 spending bills still. So, what harm was done to the country by us being diligent and purposeful in selecting a speaker? And now we've passed another spending bill coming out of that. So now we've passed 5 spending bills. The Senate, again, at 0. We hope to pass 3 more this week. I said many times during the 3 weeks, the American people didn't care in January that it took us a few days to get the speaker decision, as best we could, and they won't care soon that it took us 3 weeks. And already you've turned the page, and the American people don't care that the last 3 weeks you were battling to choose a speaker. They care what we do for them. And does Washington win for them instead of winning for the special interest groups? So, and Mike Johnson, is as strong as he is and as solid as he is, and much as I respect him, he will need to be held accountable as a speaker. He'll have all the wrong pressures, all the wrong influences, all the wrong individuals trying to speak into his ear and trying to influence him in the wrong way. And so, and he will be imperfect, as we all would be. And so we've got to be diligent. The battle just continues. We turn the page and we fight together with him, alongside him, and helping him. But you're right, what you said just a moment ago, all the pundits and the critics, he's only been in Washington 7 years, so he's not a fully immersed swamp creature, so he's unqualified, some have said. We disrupted Congress. We disrupted Washington. We upset the status quo. We took a blow against the swamp cartel, the uniparty cartel that controls everything, the elites, the donor class, the K Street lobbyists, the special interests. They didn't get to pick the speaker. The American people, through the elected representatives, pick the speaker. And thank God, to your last point, we have a speaker who is grounded on the foundation of God's word. He believes in biblical truth. He knows what his true north is. He unashamedly says, hey, you want to know what my view is on an issue? Check God's word first. Check the Bible. That's my foundation. And that was the foundation of the founding fathers, those who established this country, who established the practice of Congress opening every session in prayer, who declared a national day of prayer, who sought divine intervention, divine providence when establishing this country. And they believed it was a miracle that they were able to do this. And they said, hey, these rights that we're trying to protect in this Constitution are unalienable rights given to us by God.
So well said, Congressman Bob Good. And I so appreciate that you share that same perspective with now Speaker Mike Johnson, and that there are a few still in Washington that will be bold advocates for the truth and the civil government that is founded on a biblical worldview. And it's just silly that some of the pushback is suggesting that the First Amendment requires a separation of church and state. That's nowhere in the First Amendment or the U.S. Constitution, that doesn't allow us to bring our faith to Washington, and especially in elected office. The First Amendment was designed that Congress and the government would stay out of the church, not that faith would stay out of politics. And so how much more does that mean now in light of a speaker and someone like you as well that are so such bold Christians, and how do you address that opposition?
You're exactly right, Jenna, that the First Amendment was intended to protect the church from the government. It was never intended to protect the government from spiritual, biblical, or religious influence. And we know that's true from any honest reading of our founding documents and the writings of the founders themselves. And it is critical that we recognize absolute truth, that we recognize moral foundation, that we recognize the critical importance of our essential institutions of the church and of the family, not to give any preference to any particular faith or religion, but recognizing that faith is the foundation upon which we were founded as a nation. Faith is the foundation upon which our worldview is based and our moral compass is based. I've often said if you can't trust someone on the moral issues, you really can't trust them on anything. And that almost everything that plagues our society is a failure to follow God's principles for morality, marriage, and the family. And the importance of faith, the importance of the church, the importance of the family cannot be overstated. And Mike Johnson brings that worldview to the speakership in a way that recognizes the freedoms we have in this country to believe as we want to believe or not to believe, to worship as we want to worship or not to worship. However, he doesn't apologize for his faith and his worldview and his biblical foundation, which is consistent with, again, how this nation was founded.
Yes, so well said, and I could not agree more. And so as we look forward to now the U.S. House of Representatives getting back to work, and of course the appropriations package that will need to be addressed, and there's the continuing resolution is about to expire, and understanding there is that worldview foundation, and then the practical application. What should conservatives understand in terms of some of the necessary compromises? I mean, we tend to think of compromise as a bad word, but Mike Johnson actually continually, as a friend of mine over the last few years, personally, continues to remind me that Congress is a team sport, and there are some things you never compromise your principles, but you do have to work with the entire Congress and the entire conference. So, how do you see the Congress moving forward, and how should conservatives understand that principle of leadership?
Well, we got a little snapshot on Mike Johnson's speakership this past week when he met with President Biden, and he served notice to him that we are not going to bring to the floor a combined $100 billion plus package for Israel, Ukraine, other ill-defined humanitarian assistance, other more billions of dollars more for Secretary Mayorkas to flood more illegals into the country. But we would separate out the Israeli package of $10 to $14 billion as a standalone for an up or down vote, as it should be considered as a standalone for up or down vote, which I think will pass. But he also brought in a terribly important component to it that we would require pay fors or offsets, that we wouldn't be borrowing the money to send to Israel, that borrowing money that we don't have to plunge us further into debt. But even something so important as aid for Israel should be paid for when you're running a $200 billion deficit each month. And so I support that. That's a good picture. And as we look at the remaining spending bills, we've got to cut our spending, number one, take some steps towards fiscal responsibility. We've got a long ways to go there, and we're not going to fix it this year, but take some steps towards that. Secondly, implement the conservative policies the American people asked us to implement, for which we ran upon a year ago, and reverse harmful, damaging policies under which Americans are suffering that are in place now under the Biden, Pelosi, Schumer policies that were put in place at the end of last year. So we've got to take steps in the right direction. We've got to hold ourselves accountable to do that, even Speaker Johnson accountable to do that, to make the tough choices. And then he's also spoken to creating a bipartisan debt commission, which will be required to deal with our mandatory spending, the explosion of the mandatory spending that's bankrupting the country, quite frankly. If we were to cut all discretionary spending, the things that we vote on annually, not counting the part that we kind of give ourselves a pass on and call it mandatory, we don't have to authorize and appropriate it every year, the mandatory, just the discretionary spending, all of that is borrowed. All of that is borrowed. And if we were to eliminate all of that, we would still run a deficit. The last thing I'll just add on that, on the spending on deficit, on the national debt standpoint, is we've got to extend the Trump tax cuts, which expire at the end of this year, so that we can spur economic growth and return to pro-growth policy, so we get the revenue side coming up as we also try to ratchet down the spending side of it to try to save the nation from a fiscal standpoint.
And all of this sounds absolutely like the right direction and an up or down vote on a single issue. What a concept. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And Congressman Bob Good, really appreciate your time. We will be praying for you and Speaker Mike Johnson and everyone in Congress to continue to stand firm on what is in the best interest genuinely of America. So thank you, as always, so much for joining me. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. On MyPillow's 20-year anniversary with over 80 million MyPillows sold, Mike Lindell wants to thank each and every one of you by giving you the lowest price in history on his MyPillows. You will receive a queen size MyPillow for only $19.98. The regular price is $69.98 and just $10 more for a king size. You'll receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, which I love, and so much more. This is the time to try out some of the amazing products you've had your eye on from MyPillow. So go to mypillow.com and enter promo code Jenna to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98. You can go to mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475. Be sure to use the promo code Jenna. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna.